Welcome to the Smart Influencer Podcast. I'm Corinne.
And I'm Christina.
And together we help digital entrepreneurs streamline their businesses, maximize revenue, and finally feel in control of their time.
Every week, we share tried and true strategies, proven systems, and expert interviews to help you grow your influence and income without the burnout. So if you're ready to get smarter about how you run your business, you are in the right place.
Before we dive in, if you love what you hear, be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you find today's conversation helpful, please share it with a friend who could use it too.
So today we're super excited to be chatting with Katie Trant from Foodie Brand Labs, all about branding and promoting your brand. I love this topic, so welcome to the show, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. So I'm Katie, and I'm a food blogger. I've been writing a food blog since 2010, so kind of back in the not the very beginning, but pretty close. And for almost the same amount of time, I've worked full time in brand strategy agencies. And I fell into the world of brand strategy kind of accidentally. It happened as a result of my now ex-husband. We moved to Sweden for his job, and I was in the middle of doing my first degree in nutrition, and I was like, what am I going to do? I ended up doing a master's degree in nutrition here, and then I thought, okay, I need a job. And I did also do a degree in creative writing. So I thought, well, maybe I can fall back on my writing background and position myself as like an English expert, which is actually something that's in demand in a lot of the brand agencies, marketing and advertising agencies. The clients are always looking for native English speakers, especially when it comes to copy. So I started at an agency and just totally fell in love with the world of branding. And I think I only ever intended it to be kind of a stopgap. I thought, like, I'll do this for a while till I figure out how to work with nutrition in Swedish. And then I just fell in love with the art and science of branding. And it was a really interesting place for me to be as someone who had a background in art, in creative writing, and then 2 degrees in science, because I was in this unique position where I could straddle the worlds of strategy and creativity. And I find that in brand agencies, in the ones I've worked in anyways, we tend to work with what I refer to as evidence-based creativity. So it's interpreting data and interpreting strategy and then spinning it into a creative execution to bring a brand to life. So it was just, I don't know, I just really found my home there. And I really love the pace as well. It's usually like a really fast pace and you're constantly learning new things because you're working with different clients in different sectors. So I just kind of stayed. And my nutrition degree I express through my food blog, which is called Hey Nutrition Ladies. So I do, keep one toe in that world. And then a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago now, I had a mastermind group of food bloggers, and we had rotating responsibility for presenting. And I said, well, I work with brand strategy in my day job, so I don't know if anyone is interested in hearing about this. And I did this really high level presentation about brand. It was like 20 minutes long, and it was, what a brand is, what a brand isn't. Here's how you do a position mapping exercise, a few like super basic elements of brand. And when you're presenting on Zoom and you've got the tiny squares and you can't really tell if people are listening, I was like, I don't know if they're just like making Pinterest graphics in the background and this is super boring. And I finished and they were like, why are you not doing this for food bloggers? Like, this is clearly your calling. And I was like, why am I not doing this for food bloggers? And I called a friend of mine who is from the brand world and has helped me quite a lot. And I was like, listen to what just happened. She was like, dude, you have to do this. So I just put my head down and created Foodie Brand Lab. And we started, I say we, because I have a VA who has been with me all along, Mara, who has been like absolutely instrumental. Foodie Brand Lab would not exist if it wasn't for her. We started with a course. And that was kind of the only plan at that point, to create a self-paced digital course for creators that goes through all the elements of a brand platform. And I really love the course, but then there was sort of a call for a more done for you service as well. There was people who were like, I need this. I'm never going to finish a course. Can you just do it for me? And so then we put together two other offerings. We have a done with you and a done for you service. And I just like fell in love with the done for you service. And that part of it is very similar to the work that I did in brand agencies, except rather than working with like a Fortune 500 company and working with a huge brand team that they have, I'm working with a creator, typically a woman, typically running her business from her home. And I find the work so much more meaningful. Like, it's fine helping to put a big Fortune 500 company on the map or helping them articulate their brand. But I find that when I can do that with a creator who is like, oh my God, I understand my business so much more clearly now. And now I understand what I need to do. I have the roadmap. To me, that's so much more meaningful. So that's where I like to focus most of my energy now.
Oh,
So,
that's
Katie, I'm
awesome.
going to pause you really quick because, like, we flew past a lot of stuff that I
Yeah.
think, like, listeners are going to want to come back and know about. And so, like, Christina, for a couple months, because we've had, we've talked about branding before. Christina's
Mhm.
really been on a tear on this, like, and we think, like, right now is the time for it.
Yeah.
But for people that aren't quite there yet or still trying to understand this, like let's go all the way back to like where you did that presentation, like
Yeah.
starting with what is a brand, what isn't a brand?
Yeah.
Like break this
Yeah.
down like I'm in kindergarten.
Yeah, super good question, and I think a really important one. And this was actually one of the reasons that I decided to build Foodie Brand Lab was because I heard people talking about brand more and more in the creator space, but I didn't hear them talking about it in a qualified way, or they were talking about part of a brand, but not in a holistic sense. And I started getting frustrated about that. And I thought, okay, instead of getting frustrated, I just need to get louder and really help people understand this. So, a brand, I think a lot of people, when they talk about brand, they're talking about their visual identity, they're talking about their colors, their logo, the way their brand looks, or they're talking about their voice, the way their brand sounds. And
Right.
those are certainly important elements of a brand. But a brand is actually, the way that I like to describe it is a brand is a tool that we use to shape perception.
Mm.
And the perception of your brand lives in the hearts and minds of people who with it. So we can do a lot of work to try and shape that perception. That is the art and science of branding. It's all in the name of shaping that perception. But how it is perceived by the end user is up to them, not us. So our brand is actually up to the user. Um, but certainly brand strategy exists for a reason to help, shape that journey for them in the best way possible. So it's a brand is like, it's a tool, it's an ecosystem is another way I like to describe it. So there are all these elements of your brand. There's your brand position, your brand purpose, your brand's identity, your brand personality, your brand values, and all of those things come together to shape your brand, which is that
Hmm.
perception.
And I think that was the big aha moment for me the first time I heard you speak, and I kind of became like the disciple of of your philosophy, and I would tell it to anybody that will listen to me. That was a big aha moment because it was like I was thinking more aesthetically, like what like my colors say, and kind of how you feel when you land on my site. And after listening to you just that one time, I'm like, oh, I have this all wrong. Like I
Yeah.
really need to do the work. And now, especially like with AI, it's so important that our readers know who we are, what we stand for, and they start to build that know, like, and trust with us.
Yeah. And I think that uh, people do think that it's these little elements, or they're confusing brand with niche a lot of
Yeah.
times. And I had a call the other day with a creator who was interested in working together, and she sent me her brand guide to look at ahead of time. And she was like, I thought I knew what I was talking about, but then I listened to you and I realized that I don't. And I thought that brand and niche were the same. And I looked at her brand guide and I was like, okay, well, first of all, they're not the same. Niche is like a it can belong in your brand platform, but I think brand is a lot more powerful than niche,
Hmm.
and niche is kind of adjacent to your brand position. But even her niche, she had just defined as something really not, I mean, I don't know if fluffy is the right word, but I think it was like bold flavors. And I was like, but bold flavors isn't even a niche. That's like part of how you serve a niche.
Hmm.
And you need to understand all these other elements about who you are before you can say, we deliver this part of our brand by serving our users bold flavors.
Hmm.
Right? It's like there's other pieces to the puzzle that are more important than niche or your logo. I mean, I think your logo is probably one of the most unimportant parts of your brand these days, especially because for us as creators, I don't know how much of your audience is food creators versus other niches, but um, with food sites, when like 70+% of our users are on mobile, they're not really looking at our branding elements that much
Right.
anyways. And I think that we who interact with our websites on a desktop mostly because we're working on it there and we see the layout and we see the colors and the logos and those things, and we sort of fixate on those without realizing how unimportant they are to the end user. And I do think that all of those branding elements have a place, but the strategy part of it to me is so much more
Hmm.
important and mu more important to who you are, how you work with your business, and more important to the longevity of your business and your ability to pivot and stay relevant as platforms change and technologies change and all of these things, that we're facing right now, where everything is like, I feel like we're in a snow globe and just like things are floating all over the place. And brand is a really powerful compass to help navigate that.
That's
So,
exact.
Katie, oh, go ahead,
I would
Christina.
say that's exactly what I'm finding is that by understanding this and I don't really have 100% grip on it yet. But the more I'm digging into it, the more it's helping me make decisions that are
Yes.
going to further my business and help me make smart, well-informed decisions that are going to move my business forward instead of
Yeah.
just focusing on silly things that are really just keeping me in place.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know I said let's go back to the beginning and like I still feel like if that was the 100 level, I need remedial. Like I need to step
Yeah.
one more back. Like what's an example? I don't in my brain yet have an idea of okay, this is a brand. Like, give me an example of what's a brand or what are those components, even if like, and I get, right? I am understanding that that's going to be unique. Everybody's going to do their own, but there's got to be some key components of what that is and how we go about finding it.
Yeah, there are for sure key components, and I think that they're ones that I kind of rattled off before, like your position. And I think your position is always the toughest nut to crack in brand strategy, and it's so tough that the agency that I was working at up until the end of last year we decided within the leadership team we need to redefine our own position, right? Because technology is changing, and what do we do? And our agency is even relevant anymore. And we had all of the most senior strategists in the company working on this for months. Like I'm talking 6, 7 months, and just like couldn't get there. And I think that part of that was it was a little too inside out. Like there was a little too much navel gazing. This is the reason that companies hire brand agencies because you can look at what's there that you're too close to
Yeah.
usually. But I mean, the reason I'm telling this story is just to say this, it's a tough part of the brand strategy to nail, even for people who work with it on a daily basis.
So
Um,
could you tell us, for just to give like a concrete example, what is Hey Nutrition Ladies brand position?
oh, I should have looked at my brand guidelines before this call. I
We put you right
should
on
pull
the
them up.
spot.
Yeah, I
Or
think that
just a generic one if you wanted to give us an example.
so, okay, I can talk you through this. I do a brand mapping exercise, and I know that we're recording this, so some people are looking at the video and some people are listening. So if you're listening, you have to, I'm using my arms to make like a cross, right? So I've got like, imagine if I had a rectangular piece of paper and I divided it into 4 quadrants.
Mhm.
And you take these quadrants and then you take like the x-axis and the y-axis And at the tops of them, you create definitions of the space.
Mhm.
And so, for example, for Hey Nutrition Lady, when I did this brand mapping exercise as an example in the course, I put on one side of the axis, I put like super healthy food, and on the other side, I put really indulgent food. And then on these, this one is the Y, I think.
Why? Mhm.
Um, I put hardcore vegan at the top and hardcore meat at the bottom, which is kind of irrelevant because Hey Nutrition Lady is a vegetarian blog. So if I was going to really do this exercise properly, I wouldn't put the meat in there. But I wanted to put that there as an example to show if we would map some other creators against me, because this is what I typically do when I do this for other people. I'll take them and create this world, this brand world that they live in. And then I'll take other creators who are kind of adjacent and see where they fit on the map as
Mm.
well. So I would take like some examples of like really big sites that people know, like Sally's Baking Addiction, right? Pretty indulgent. I mean, it's by nature, baking recipes are pretty indulgent
Mhm.
on her site as well. She does have some recipes that aren't baking. She has some like chicken dinners and she's got some sauces and some salads. So I wouldn't put her like all the way at the end of the indulgent axis, but I'd put her like pretty close to that
Right.
side. And Hey Nutrition Lady, I would position, I mean, obviously it's much more close to the healthy end because that's the kind of
It's right in
premise
the
of the
name.
site. Yeah. Like I can't have a site named Hey Nutrition Lady and write, really indulgent, high fat cupcake recipes. I mean, I could, but it would be a brand mismatch. So it's closer to the healthy, but I didn't put it all the way there because I really believe in and advocate intuitive eating, and I believe that treats should be treats. And I find that my audience really relates to that. So I do have like a black bean brownie and stuff on my site. But if you gave me the person the choice between a black bean brownie and a like buttery brownie, I'm going to take the buttery brownie any day of the week, right? So I couldn't put the Hey Nutrition Lady brand all the way over there, but it's like 75%. And then in terms of like, hardcore vegan or hardcore meat, I don't have any meat recipes on my site, so I live above that line, but I do have eggs and dairy, so it's not up at the top of the vegan one. And so I took other food bloggers like other vegetarians, like Cookie and Kate, and put her on the map in a pretty close position to where I am, but not as far towards the healthy because she doesn't have the nutrition credentials that I have. And so I'm using all these elements, like what I know about them, what I know about me, and sort of moving, chess players around on this map to figure out where in the world I belong, like
Right.
what's my corner of the internet. And you can define those axes. It doesn't have to be vegan and meat
Right.
and healthy and indulgent. You can use any words that are relevant for your niche. And this is where niche becomes kind of adjacent to position. Like, who are we serving? What are they looking for? If I have a gluten-free baking blog, I'm not going to put like whole wheat or whatever, on that map. So you have to kind
Right.
of find the names of those axes that are relevant. And I find that this is what gets tricky for people.
Mhm.
I actually went through and I re-recorded this unit in the course because I found that when people did the exercise and they shared their work with me, they were almost always coming up with a position that was super close to where mine was, the example. And I was like, okay, but no. This isn't correct. So I re-recorded it and I put in like a whole bunch more examples just to show that, you're not boxed into how I have made this definition. You are in charge of the definition, but it has to make sense
Yeah.
for the audience you serve.
Right.
Well,
So
food,
it could be
food,
like quick and easy to intricate gourmet meals, right? Or like
Totally. Yeah.
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It
food
could
bloggers
be
love a
like
good formula, so that's probably why it
100%.
happens.
Yeah. I follow a creator who I really love her content. She does a lot of recipes that start with like a box mix, which I would never, my audience would hate that, but it really works for her.
Right.
And so it will be like box mix homemade on those axes or you know, gourmet or everyday, things like that. So you just sort of find those keywords that are relevant to helping define your niche, and then you use that to create your map.
Hmm.
And it's a tough exercise to do, but it's a really useful one.
Hmm.
And I find that once you've figured out your position, like once you're like, yes, this is my home. And I can't remember the exact words I used to define the Hey Nutrition Lady position. I think it's something with healthy vegetarian recipes developed by a university trained nutritionist, which is too many words for a position statement, but you get the essence there. Um, uh, Once you have figured that out, like this is where I live, and you should know this is my purpose, like beyond just cranking out recipes, beyond just earning ad revenue. Why do you exist? What
Hmm.
is the purpose of your content? Who does it serve? And why do you do it?
Hmm.
And I've been doing this for so long. My site wasn't even monetized for the first 8 years I did it, but I just kept going because I love it. And I don't think that I can stop. You know, I have this like pull to doing it and to serving these kind of no nonsense healthy vegetarian recipes. And I want people to think that they have a friend who's a nutritionist who's just going to tell them like it is. There's no fads, you know, no nonsense, no judgment, and no fads. Those are three of my core
I
principles.
like that.
Um, that they just feel like they can really trust me and what I say. And everything that I do with my brand comes from that lens. But
Hmm.
I've gotten there by doing that positioning exercise, by defining my purpose, by articulating my values, and by articulating my brand personality as well.
So this is almost, if I'm understanding correctly, like creating the avatar, right? Like we're told to create an avatar for our readers so we can, very descriptively define them and create
Yeah.
content specifically for that person. We're kind of flipping it and we are the avatar and we're creating an avatar kind of for ourselves as to who we are, what we stand for. So we know we can create this kind of content and we match up with this, you know, reader avatar.
Yeah. That is a good way to put it. I should say I hate the word
I
avatar.
do too.
Like
I fought
I
that
don't know what it
tooth and
is,
nail.
but I think it's like my snobby agency side because it's not a word that we would ever use in defining a target audience or whatever. And when people always talk about their avatar, I'm like, it drives me crazy. But you're right that in a way you are doing that exercise, but for the brand
Right.
rather than for the user. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just trying to like relate it to maybe our listeners who might have a difficult time, interpreting
I almost wish
everything.
we had recorded these in reverse order. We interviewed Carrie Ann a couple weeks ago. Amazing. I mean, like it was so much fun to record with her. But I feel like hers is an obvious next step after
Yeah.
this podcast episode. Like I think you like understand like the root of what your brand is, like what everything you talked about, right? Like what position you're holding, what your true purpose is. And like
Mhm.
Carrie Ann does a great job of picking up the ball from there and running with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Here are the visuals. This is how you show up authentically and communicate all those core principles,
Mhm.
all of that. Like it is an obvious one too. We just recorded it too long.
So
So
Yeah.
listeners, go back, listen to this, and then go back and listen to Kari Ann's talk. I think
yeah,
it'll make much more sense for you.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, without having listened to that episode myself,
Yeah.
I can tell you that you're right about that because I think the correct order of operations in any business always is starting with brand.
Hmm.
And if you're doing marketing before you've done brand work, if you're doing a new visual identity before you've done brand work, if you're getting yourself a new website before you've done brand work, if you're doing content planning before you're doing brand work, you're doing it in the wrong order.
Hmm.
You have to start with brand.
Yeah, and when I heard you speak that first time, like the light bulb literally went off and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh. Like, yes, I need to do this." And I truly went down a rabbit hole for about 2 weeks straight. I didn't stop.
Yeah. And that's why it became a non-negotiable for the summit. That's why it's on the agenda. Thank God you were coming because yes, like you're like the messiah in our world right now for
Oh my God,
describing
the
this in a way that's
expectations are so
approachable.
high on this
So
presentation.
But it, well, it is because you know it. You not only do you know it, And I love when we get people like this that bring in outside expertise, like they've used it in the in the broader world, and
Yeah.
then but they speak the creator
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Um, like to marry, because most of us start as creators, not as business owners, and but
Mhm.
by with a good stroke of luck, right? Like we're running a business and a successful business, but we feel like we're just playing at that side, like not really getting it. So I love when we got
Yeah.
people that are like, no, no, here's how you do it, and can speak our language and well, dumb it down for a lack of a better term, right?
Mm.
Like thank you for being patient with me and really breaking it down because I get it now. I do get it.
Well, and I
Yeah. Good.
think too,
Good.
this is like one of those fundamental, like those foundational pieces that once you have this, and this is why we're putting you very early on in the agenda for the summit, because I think once you have a good understanding here, it is really going to help guide everything else that we talk about and having you make informed decisions about your business instead of just willy-nilly doing things or not having any data to back you up or anything to really guide you and set that path for you. This is like your lens,
Mhm.
like you said, to look at everything else.
Right. Like it makes no sense to be talking about our email strategy until you've nailed down what it is
Yeah.
you're trying to communicate to
Or
them.
creating products, right? How many times are, like that's huge, creating digital products.
Yeah.
If you don't understand yourself, let alone your audience,
Okay, I've
Yeah.
got another remedial level question before we get too far down roads I don't understand again.
Yeah.
Because you talked about earlier about brand strategy, like how
Mhm.
important it is to have a brand strategy. Okay, now that I've just grasped what it is we're doing with brand,
Yeah.
what are we doing with the brand strategy? Like, what does that mean? What does it
Well,
look like?
the brand strategy is it's like your navigation tool. It's like your GPS for your
Mm,
brand. So, I mean, a brand, as we've talked about, is this very like high level concept where it's the perception that people have of your business. Branding is the act of applying an identity to something. So I think of branding like if you think about cattle on a ranch and like literally like you're branding them with the rancher's, symbol, that is applying that rancher's identity to the cattle. And it's the same concept. We're not like burning things, but we're taking visuals and colors and logos and applying branding to something to give it an identity. Brand strategy is the compass or the map for how we work with all these elements inside the brand to make sure that we're navigating them correctly. And when I mean, someone who comes through the Foodie Brand Lab course, or if they work with me one-on-one, they come out at the end with brand guidelines. And that's like your guide to working with your brand, whether you're one person who works on it or whether you have a big team. It's the
mhm,
same delivery that we give to big corporate clients. I do a deeper dive into how your brand is expressed across all these different touch points. And we have so many different touch points that we work with. We've got our websites, our Instagram or other social media channels. You might have a lot of people are moving now to Substack. You've got your digital products that you sell. Maybe you've got a cookbook, maybe you've got a physical product. All of those are expressions of your brand, and you use your brand guidelines to understand how your brand is expressed across each touch point. Because it's not necessarily, I mean, consistency is super important, but I'm going to behave slightly differently depending on what channel I'm in. Like if my Pinterest personality is pretty different than my Instagram personality. Instagram is really where I like pull back the curtain and I show people my messy kitchen because I want to be human and relatable. You don't show a messy kitchen on Pinterest. Um, you can use it as a litmus test if you're doing brand partnerships. Is this partnership on brand for you? Is it a good match?
mhm.
Not all of them are, right? So that strategy is your guide to making sure that your brand is applied consistently across all those touch points.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So you mentioned in like when we were first talking about personal brand. How does a personal brand How is that different from your business brand, or is it different?
It's not different.
Okay.
This is something that I've been going, you were in the webinar I put on last
Yes.
week. And that's like I want to have t-shirts made that say a personal brand is still a brand. It's a brand branding, a brand is a tool that's used to shape perception, and a traditional brand is conceived of an idea or a product. You know, Nike was born from the inspiration of having the best athletic shoes on the market. Spotify was created to disrupt the music industry. And those are traditional brands. A personal brand is still a brand. It's still, we still work with our brand strategy to shape the perception of a person
Hmm.
rather than of a company or an entity.
Okay.
And I think that where this gets a bit muddy, I do think that there are creators that have multiple brands.
Mm.
Um, and I'll give you an example. Chelsea Cole, who I think you might know, she has a food blog called A Duck's Oven.
A duck's oven, yeah.
Yeah, and she does a lot of sous vide recipes. She has two self-published cookbooks, and she has a course called the Cookbook Lab where she teaches people to self-publish cookbooks.
Hmm.
And she asked me to come into her group and do a talk about brand for cookbooks. Like, how does your brand come across in your cookbooks? And at that point, she had just announced the news. I don't think it was like public yet, but she came out with her first traditionally published cookbook. And it was like way in a different world. She published, you know, the romantasy novels, ACOTAR, A Court of
Hmm.
Thorn and Roses.
Yeah.
So she published an ACOTAR cookbook. It was called I don't know if it was called and it's not a Court of Thorns and Roses. Anyways, it has a Thorns and Roses name in it, but it's a cookbook, a feast of thorns and roses. And it's like fully inspired by the book. She went through the book and she noted every place they mentioned a recipe or a food. And then she developed those recipes. And she's been
Wow.
hugely successful. And she was like, I feel like my brand is having an identity crisis because I do a duck's oven. I shoot on pink and yellow backgrounds. I make sous vide recipes. And I said, but actually, no, because you now, as I see it, you have three brands that work. If you had like a Venn diagram, right, with circles, you have the Duck's Oven brand, that her website is very much operated like a traditional brand, and she is the ambassador of that brand. Then she has the Cookbook Lab. That's also a traditional brand, and she's the ambassador of that brand. And then she has the Chelsea Cole brand. That's her personal brand. And her personal brand suddenly became a lot more important when she published this traditionally published cookbook that was in like a whole other universe, right? She is the ambassador of all three of those brands. They're
Mm.
all kind of related to each other in some way. They have overlaps, but they also have distinct differences. And I think that many creators would find themselves in the same position. If you have multiple websites, you know, how are you operating those? And I know a lot of people have more than one website these days that have different focuses. Maybe you have two websites with totally different niches. And so, how do you show up as the representative to both of those brands? And that's where your personal brand kind of straddles traditional brand. It gets a bit like the edges get gray, but I can like see it. I can see a map in my head of how this all works.
But I think the one thing you said there made a lot of sense. Like it really hit it home for me. Like you are the ambassador
Yes.
of your brand.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like the strong point there. And I think that was a great example you gave too, because it showed with Chelsea Cole the different ways that she shows up and how she is an ambassador for all three of those. So that makes sense to me in that kind of context.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So even now, just talking about this, like you can just see how it's so powerful and we need it, but it
Yeah.
is complicated and there's a
Hmm.
lot of moving parts and there's a lot of work you have to do. It's not as simple as sitting down and saying, "Well, I like this Pantone red and
Yeah.
and this
Right.
Pantone blue and I like this font and
Yeah.
I use
I
these
think
words."
I think where people are led astray in the creator space, is in two places. One is people have been told to niche down for so many years that
Hmm.
that's so important. And I think niching down can be powerful, but I don't think it's necessarily like the most important thing. Like I said, I think niche is adjacent to brand position. And I think a lot of people think that is their brand. Niching down becomes the brand. And then I also think what I hear, what I've heard in the last 6 months, and why I put on this webinar last week is, everybody's talking about personal brand, and they're just talking about like being really personal and being an open book. And that's not what a personal brand is.
Mhm.
It can be if you write that into your brand strategy, but it doesn't have to be. Like my friend messaged me today. We've both been very neglectful of making reels in our social media strategy, but I've realized like for not because I think Instagram will become a big traffic driver for Hey Nutrition Lady, but because I think brand building and brand recognition is so important. I need to get my face out there more. So I'm gonna start making reels, even though I don't want to. And my friend messaged me, she's in the same position, and she was like, oh my God, now, because she's been doing hands and pans videos for years, and she's also realized she needs to put her face in them now. She's like, now I gotta get dressed and put on makeup before I do reels. And I was like, well, do you? Like, is that part of your brand strategy? Is part of your personal brand showing up with makeup on your face? Because it doesn't have to be, right? You get to
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah.
So I think people have feel this pressure when they hear about personal brand, and I get a lot of questions like, what if I'm an introvert? I'm like, then be an introvert. Like, come up with guidelines that you are comfortable operating within. You get to set the boundaries of like what you do and don't share and what your personal brand is. You have to come up with your strategic self.
Hmm.
I think understanding that a personal brand is a brand strategy to shape perception of a person will actually liberate the introverts to figure out how to operate within the confines of their comfort zone rather than feeling that they have to be like on the internet oversharing, because you don't.
Yeah.
You
That you have
have
to
to
do what
be,
everybody else is doing.
you don't have to do what everyone else is
Yeah.
doing. In fact, don't, because then you're not going to be memorable. You're going to
Hmm.
be in this sea of sameness. And I
Hmm.
think that
That was good. Sea
again,
of
like,
sameness.
Yeah.
does, I always ask myself, like, does sharing this add value? And is it relevant to my
Hmm.
brand? Does it make sense?
Hmm. Mm. So once you have these guidelines
Yeah.
done, right? Like once you've done the work, the hard work, and you have these, I can see where it's a super powerful thing because now I can give that to my writers. I could give it to my photographers. I can give
Yep.
it to my video editor,
Yep.
whoever, and they know exactly what
Yep.
to do to carry forth that brand just by reading the work that we've put into this. They have a good sense of who I am, what I stand for, what I want to look like on the internet.
Yes, exactly. And also, if you are discussing brand partnerships, I've had people come through Foodie Brand Lab and say that they're getting way more brand partnerships now and brand partnerships that make sense for them. And the brands that want to work with them are this one creator I worked with. She said they're coming to her and saying, wow, we so clearly get what you're about.
Hmm.
And it's a great fit. And so it's sort of also being able to articulate who you are, what you stand for, and so on.
Yeah.
That's super important. The bad news, Christina, is
Uh-oh.
that once all that work is done, it's not done forever. You
Of
have
course
to,
not.
no, but I think a lot of people they're like, oh, it's like this one and done brand strategy thing. But it is something that warrants reevaluating.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be every year, but I would say like every couple years, like
Hmm.
has technology changed? Um, have my values changed? Has the landscape changed? Certainly, like big corporate companies, they will update their brand strategy and they will update their brand's identities. The agency that I worked for last, they updated IKEA's logo a few years ago nobody noticed that IKEA's logo changed. And that was intentional. But it
Mm,
was just updated ever so slightly to be more compatible with digital spaces.
mm,
It's a really interesting case study. And so I'm actually going through a brand refresh for Hey Nutrition Lady right now because the logo and visual identity that we did, that was created in 2018. And when my tech team, and I love the visual identity, but when my tech team did an update of my homepage, I was like, whoa, what happened to the logo? Because the templates now, whether you're on mobile or on desktop, like the space at the top for your visual branding is so narrow now by design, right? Because we're trying to get ads up above the fold. And I have this kind of blocky logo, and they had to make it so small to fit in that space.
mm.
So I contacted my designer and I was like, hey, I think we need to look at this. I think we need to change it to something that's longer and narrower.
Yeah.
Um, to evolve with the technology. And like 2018, that's what, 7 years ago? So we are due for a brand refresh. But it's not just for the sake of a brand refresh. It's not like, oh, this doesn't feel fresh or relevant anymore. It's like, okay, so things have changed and this isn't working anymore. So
Hmm.
how can we adapt it?
Mm,
While still staying on brand. And I handed over the brand guidelines. I was like, here you go. Here's the personality. Here's the values. Here's all these elements that I've put in place since we last worked together. Now you have that to shape the identity from.
yeah.
Um, yeah. And I think that's a really, again, order of operations, that strategy work should come first.
I'm super excited about what you're going to talk about at the summit because even just this conversation, which has flown by, has been even more eye-opening. I was at your workshop that you had the other day. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I've been to all the things, and every time I walk away with so much more information.
That's good.
So. Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. So you have a couple of products out there if our
Mhm.
listeners were interested in learning more. So not only can they come to the summit and see you live and in person and get to pick your so smart brain,
Yeah.
And get to
but
actually implement some
yeah,
of it. That's the piece I'm
Yeah.
most
yeah,
excited
I have to
about.
think about what we're going to do there. That'll be
yeah.
good. Yeah.
So you're not just going to talk about it, listen to the podcast, and have to go back and do all this work yourself. You're going to leave the summit with some guided implementation. But can you tell us a bit about your products that you offer too?
Yeah, I have a variety of ways that people can work with me or stay in touch. I mean, the most basic, like on Instagram, I'm always dropping little bite-sized brand strategy pieces. I have a newsletter called Brand Bites that I send out twice a month. And that's, again, bite-sized brand strategy. It's a little longer than Instagram, but try to make it really digestible. And then I've got the Foodie Brand Lab course, which is the kind of entry level. I've got a done with you service where you do the course and then you get 4 coaching calls with it. So that's really good for people if you know that you're someone who's deadline driven and you're never going to get through a course if you left to your own devices. We're all guilty of that.
That's me.
I have your graveyard of unfinished courses. I think that's a really good option because it gives you those like goalposts to work towards. And then people send me their work and I give them feedback and we kind of work through it together. And then there's the done for you where I dig in and I do all the background research and kind of present it and workshop it and so on. So it's kind of 3 levels targeted towards 3 different needs that people have.
Mhm.
I love
Awesome.
that.
Yeah, and we will put links to all of that in the show notes so you can easily learn more about Katie and her products. I think you'll just be blown away because I surely was. And if our listeners want to get to know you better, what is the best place for them to find you online?
Probably Instagram at Foodie Brand Lab and the newsletter
Okay.
on my site. Yeah.
I have to sign up for that. I don't think I'm getting your newsletter.
Yeah,
I'm very
I'm not
excited.
either. Yeah. We'll drop the
Very-
link for that in the show notes too.
Yeah. All the things. We use the show notes for things we want to follow up with.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Katie. It was a great chat with you. I can't wait for April now.
I know. I'm so excited.
Listeners, if you want to take action on anything we talked about today, head over to her site, Foodie Brand Lab. Like she said, she's got several different products there and different options depending on how much handholding you want. So yeah, head over foodiebrandlab.com. Go find her on Instagram, sign up for her newsletter. Christina and I are doing that as soon as we hit end on this podcast for you.
And of course, as always, we'd love to hear from you. So make sure you tag us on Instagram at the Smart Influencer or drop us an email and let us know what your biggest takeaway from today was. And we are so excited to hear what how you're applying what you learned today.
Thank you for spending time with us today. We'll be back next week with another episode to help you grow smarter, work less, and earn more. See you then.